Hey everybody, thanks for joining White Dog Outdoors. We are getting back into fly tying videos, and for the first two videos, I've invited a guest fly tyer, Gavin Rueda from Bug Boy Fly Tying. I'll link his information down below. Gavin is a phenomenal fly tyer. He's a young dude, but he is phenomenal, and he's more detailed and better at fly tying than probably almost anybody I've seen in person. So Gavin has been helping us tie some of our flies for the last couple of years, so chances are if you bought any flies from us, some of those were probably tied by Gavin. So earlier this year, I was on a kick. I had done a ton of year-on nymphing in the last many years, and I wanted to break the mold a little bit, and I wanted to go out and start throwing big streamers again. So Gavin and I got in a few conversations about throwing streamers, and one of the things about throwing big streamers is that you will catch big fish, but very few of them oftentimes, especially, in the waters that we fish in at certain times. So by throwing something like the big full-size Dungeon, you're most likely not going to get the smaller and medium-sized fish. You're going to be passing by a lot of the fish to just find the big fish. And one of the things that Gavin really liked was tying smaller versions of some of the most popular streamers, because not only will you get the bites from the big fish, but you'll get bites from, even like the 14, 15 inch to 18 inch fish, and not just the 20 plus inch fish. So one of Gavin's favorite ties is going to be the mini Dungeon. It's a mini version of the sex Dungeon, and this fly is absolutely killer. Gavin's going to be tying that in this video. He's got another streamer pattern he's going to be tying in another video that I'll have out in, I don't know, the next several weeks or so. And then there'll be a third video. We did a little fishing together this summer, mostly dry dropper fishing on small clear streams for wild rainbows and wild browns. So that'll be coming out. So most likely you're going to see Gavin in the next 3 or so videos. And this one he's going to be tying the mini Dungeon. So now with all of our fly tying videos, I like to do giveaways. So this is the fly that Gavin tied during the actual during the fly tying video. We are going to be giving away this exact fly that he tied in the video. This is the mini Dungeon, and kind of like a dirty olive with a little bit of orange, imitates sculpins, crayfish, some really cool stuff. And we're going to give away this fly. In order to take part in the giveaway, 3 things. They're really easy things, but 3 things. Be a subscriber on the channel, give this video a thumbs up, and leave a comment letting us know what kinds of things you want to see. Anything really. We're going to randomly select a winner. So without any further ado, let's get to tying the mini Dungeon.
Alright, so we're starting with the shank on the back instead of a normal hook here. And just like a hook, we'll take it all the way to the back edge. With the shank, you just want to cover up the gaps. This is a streamer, so we're going to cover up the body. No need for counting thread wraps or clean tight wraps. We'll start with the good marabou feather here in sculpin olive for the tail. Measure out. Tail's going to be about a hook shank in length, so I'll strip down all the short fibers on the marabou to clean it up. It's just easier to work with. Depending on how this first one looks, we might do two clumps for the tail. But this is horrible, but I usually wet it down. Don't stick feathers in your mouth. It's really bad. But measure that out to about the shank length. Catch it in with a couple loose turns at first and then tighten down. We're just going to work that forward here, up the shank a little bit. This just kind of builds in some of the underbody of the fly. You don't need to bring it up crazy far. Just bring it up most of the way and then clip that off. And then it's looking a little sparse for what I like. So you don't want to go too heavy. It's not going to be an obnoxiously heavy tail. But next, kind of in the middle there, we're going to add a couple strands of copper flashabou. This is going to end up being like a dirty olive, like crayfish color. So I just love the combo of copper and olive together. I think that looks really good. Then I'll take, and don't need the full length of the Flashabou, so I will probably cut that in half. I'll set aside half for later use if necessary, but if you're not concerned about wasting a couple strands of Flashabou, that's totally fine. I fold it around my thread, and I bring it first to the near side. Flashabou with the static can be a pain too. It likes to cling to everything. Then I'll wrap those back a couple turns, and then I will take and I will bring the other two strands around to the far side of the hook and then wrap those back. Trim them just a little bit longer than the marabou tail on there. I don't put a ton of flash in these flies. They don't really need it, in all honesty. Then I'm going to take sparser feather here. So we're going to take and we're going to get rid of some of the bulk down here. And I forgot to mention for scale, I guess, this is a 25mm shank in the back. The other substitute that I use on occasion is a size 6 streamer hook in the back, and then I'll do a size 4 in the front. But I've just grown accustomed to using the shanks more for in case a better fish takes the fly in. We don't want him to, or even a smaller fish, we don't want to have to deal with that second hook back there on the smaller versions. If you're going to fish the full-sized dungeons, then you don't need to worry too much about that. But I thin that out to about the volume I want. I'll measure that same length, set that on top. I'll do a pinch wrap, bring a loose turn up through the fingers, and then pull tight. Make sure that's well distributed around the hook. Kind of press on it with my thumbnail a little bit, and that kind of helps splay the fibers around the hook a little bit better. You can see that's a bit of a better tail on there. And then I'll run this up the body as well. And cut the excess off. And then we can leave our thread up here. The next step, I'm going to take some brassy sized copper wire. I use the UTC. I just take a pretty big length of it. And we're going to tie that in on the near side of the hook here. And this will be to catch in our saddle hackle feather later on. So once that's bound down to the back, I'm going to take, I like to do dubbing loops for my body. It's an unnecessary step, but I like the bugginess it creates, so we'll create our dubbing loop here. Then, like I said, no need to be clean with any of the thread wraps under the body. That's all going to come out in the end. It's all going to get covered up by the dubbing in this loop here. I'm going to take a dubbing loop spinner here, place that in, and for the body, I'm going to use a brown olive ice dub. And we're going to build not a crazy dense body, but it'll be kind of take and add little by little some dubbing, some of this brown olive ice dub here into the loop. Like I said, you could just dub it, especially with these little ones, you can just dub it straight onto the thread and pick it out later. I've just gotten used to the procedure and the look of dubbing loop bodies. And this body isn't crazy long, so you don't need to do a huge dubbing loop. But you don't want it too thin or too thick. I can kind of see through some of these clumps of dubbing, and you want to taper the thickness as you get up towards the top. So thinnest here at the base of the dubbing loop, closest to the start of your body, and with the densest amount of dubbing up here towards the spinner. Then we're just going to spin that up. Make sure my marabou and stuff doesn't get caught in the loop there. Give that a good spin. Once that's good and spun up, I'm going to take a brush here. You can take Velcro, a comb, anything like that. And I'm just going to pick this out a little bit to give it kind of that buggy look. And I forgot to half hitch my thread up here. It's half hitched on there. Bring around that bobbin cradle. Put up my thread, and then we're just going to take that twister, and I'm using a rotary vise here. This is kind of cheating, but we're going to take and just wrap in pretty much touching spirals that dubbing loop up our body here towards the front of this shank. And again, a lot of people used to more dry fly type tying. It doesn't look pretty at first. It's all kind of a trust the process type tying. You gotta finish it out. Once all the materials are on there, it'll look a lot better. So once that dubbing loop is all wrapped up, I catch that in with my thread, bind that down nice and tight, then just clip off that extra loop of thread there. That body's a little full, so I'm going to take that comb that I had. I'm going to really pick that out a little bit. I probably used a little too much dubbing for this size fly, but it's a fuller profiled streamer, so you don't have to, it's not exact. You can kind of pick it out a little bit, like if it's a little dense, you can kind of pick some of that out. But you can see it's got a nice sparkly and fuzzy looking body. And this isn't because bait fish are fuzzy or anything. It's more to add the illusion of bulk to this fly. We got to take our saddle hackle here, and we're going to wrap that over the body. So the back section of this fly is pretty much just a woolly bugger. Pull all that extra fuzz and junk off the base of that feather, that saddle feather there. And you want the fibers on the feather to be proportional to the size of the fly you're tying. So this one doesn't have crazy long fibers or anything, because I'm not trying to tie a crazy big fly for this one. But I'm going to we're going to wrap that saddle hackle. We'll give it one good wrap up here at the front, and then we'll open spiral that feather over the back half here. I'm going to grab that end. It's getting a little small on me. Grab that with my hackle pliers here. That gap's a little wide. And that's the thing, never be afraid to back off and just undo the wrap if you don't like how it looked. Nothing says you can't. And you'll be happier with the end result if you fix it beforehand. So once that feather's back to the saddle hackles, back to the tail, we're now going to take our wire, come up and catch that saddle hackle tip in there at the back end. And then we're going to open spiral that wire back through the saddle hackle here. And this, especially for streamers, you're hoping that these things get chewed on, so you got to make sure to bind them down well. And it's an extra step, but for the durability it adds, I think it's worth the 2 seconds it takes to bring that wire through versus just wrapping that feather. And then what I did there is I just helicoptered the excess wire off after I tied that in, clipped off my hackle stem. You can see I did pretty good here. You don't want to crowd that eye. I'll leave that nice and open. You can see I've still got a bit of room here. And then if you'd like, you can take that brush and get back in there a little bit. We matted all that dubbing down with that saddle hackle. So just get in there, rough it up a little bit. And that just fills in between the hackle fibers with some flashy dubbing. And then now we're going to add in that tail wing here on our streamer, or on our back piece. Get rid of that junk, that underfuzz, and that marabou feather, just like on all the ones before. Then we're going to take, I measure this feather, I'm only going to use one here. And I measure this feather to be about halfway down the tail. It's actually a little more marabou than I'd like, so I'm going to thin that out a little further. And that's, again, something I always check. I go a little heavy at first, and then I stack it up to the fly and see how it looks. And if I don't like the way it looks, fix it. Don't let the material dictate your tying. You're going to instead control that material. So I got that the right density. I'm going to go about halfway down the tail, right there. Pinch that in place, come up through my fingers and do a pinch wrap, and bind down. I do three tight turns is really all you need to start. Like I can pull on that feather and it's not really going anywhere. So I use just three solid turns of thread. Clip off those butt ends close. The very last thing we're going to do for a little accent here is we're going to add a little bit of rubber leg back here with some orange tips on it to make it look a little more like a crayfish claw. And for the back hook on this smaller one, I'm just going to do a single leg. I don't think we need to go crazy. Trim those up. And then I'm going to, because they have the orange tips on here, I'm going to kind of measure the length out. And I want those to end, again, like halfway to 2/3 down that tail. And we're going to tie those in. I like to first tie them in together here on the near side where I can see them. I'll put two kind of loose wraps on there. And then I'm going to take and I'm just going to move and scooch that other leg to the other side there. Once those are all set, I give it two tight wraps to really secure it. Clip off the excess rubber leg. And then bring my thread forward to that hook eye. Then I'll whip finish. I like to do a hand whip finish, but feel free to use a whip finish tool, whatever you feel is going to be the most secure. And I'll do a 5-turn whip finish here at the head. Snip off that tying thread, and that's our back hook to this fly. So we're going to set that part down for now. And then for our front hook, I'm going to get that locked in the vise here. And for that front hook, we are using a Daiichi 2460 streamer hook, and in a size 4. And just for general streamer tying, that's probably become one of my favorite streamer hooks out there. It's a 3 extra long ring eye hook, which is important, especially if you're using this hook for a back hook on a fly. Having that ring eye versus a down eye is an important feature. So I start my thread about a hook eye back from the hook eye there, and then I'm going to take a dumbbell eye, either lead, brass, whatever you want to use. This one happens to be painted orange, just to kind of go with that olive with orange accents, crayfishy type theme. So I do 3 wraps with the dumbbell on top, and then spin that dumbbell to the underside of your hook there. I'm going to come over the top with 3 wraps in the other direction. Then I'm going to take 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3 more good wraps. Then we're going to come under the eye, over the hook, under the eye, over the hook. We're going to do that for 4 or 5 wraps. And once that's all good, we're going to come under here and wrap just in between the dumbbell eyes and that hook shank. So we're bringing it over the eyes and under the shank. And I'm going to do probably 5 good tight turns on there to really lock those eyes in. And then you can, if you'd like, add a dot of super glue on there to really lock those eyes in place. I'm not going to here. I don't feel it's too necessary, but I've done it on flies in the past, and I know it's a popular way of going about it. So next, we're going to bring that thread back to the barb of our hook. So you can see when I leave that thread hang, we're right at the hook barb there. And then we are going to take a piece of 20-pound monofilament fishing line. You can use leader material, heavy tippet, just any cheap mono. It doesn't really matter too much. We're going to feed that through the eye of our back hook. Get that on there. Then we're going to add our spacing bead as well onto that monofilament. I'm going to scooch that up so that there's a little space. Then we're going to tie those strands of mono down to that front hook. And you can see I've got a good distance right there. I've got a little space here, but it's a small loop, but it's a fairly tight and controlled so that you don't have too much play in the back here for that back piece to get fouled up. And then I usually take a couple wraps down the bend a little bit to lock in that mono there. But then this is the important part. We're going to bring that mono, we're going to lock that down up our hook shank here. This is really important if you're tying anything larger with 2 hooks on it. You want to bind in that wire, that mono, whatever you're using for your connection. You want to bind that in really well. So I'm using, you can see how much that hook flexes when I pull tying with a lot of thread tension, and then I'm going to take those tag ends of mono, I'm going to fold them back and tie back over them. And that locks them in. I've hooked a lot of fish on streamers and never had a back hook pull out. A lot of my friends do it this way. Fellow fishermen, guides, they all tie their streamers in this manner with the articulation, and they've shared the same advice with me. They've never had a fish pull that back hook out. If you tie it in tight and double that mono back over itself. So we're going to go back here. Again, we'll stop right at the barb of the hook here. We're going to tie in. I'm going to take a little bit of marabou. This is just some of the fluff we took off earlier. And this is more of a cosmetic thing. This is kind of optional. But I tie in a little bit of this here right at the back, just to kind of cover up that mono connection. Doesn't have to be clean. Again, I just kind of, for my own sake, I think it looks a little nicer when you veil that connection with a little bit of marabou. You don't have to tie it in super heavy back here. But that just covers that connection and makes the whole fly look quite seamless. So we're going to take and wrap those butt ends up our shank again. Trim off the excess. And bind it down really good. Once that's all bound in, we're going to take the remaining length of wire that we have, or take a second piece if you didn't cut enough to start. We're going to tie that wire in again on the near side of the hook. All right. And then for this one, just to demonstrate both ways, I'll just dub this end normal. I won't do the dubbing loop here on the front. But we're just going to dub some of that brown olive ice dub here onto our hook shank, or onto our thread, sorry. And then, just like anything else with dubbing, we're going to take and wind that up in touching wraps. Always feel free to stop, tighten up. That ice dub doesn't like to dub as nice as some natural furs. So we'll make sure that's all dubbed on there nice and well. You want to control your bulk on the front a little better than we did the back, only because we have to worry about the amount of hook gap we leave exposed. You don't want to eat up and fill too much of that hook gap with dubbing, or else you'll actually hurt your hookup ratio. But for this part, it's basically a repeat of the back hook. Once you get the hang of this process, tying these things is not too complicated. It's basically just two woolly buggers tied together here with a piece of heavy mono. I'm going to bind that in with 4-5 good wraps. Get rid of that butt end of that feather stem. I'm going to take our first wrap here right by the thread, and we'll open spiral that back. I'm going to grab that with my hackle pliers because feather was a little shorter than I thought it was. And once you get that feather back to your wire, once again, we're going to catch that feather tip with our wire, open spiral our way up through that saddle hackle, to catch it in, because now instead of having that hackle tied in once, when you wrap that wire, it basically ties it in again each time that wire crosses. So we'll get that up to the front here. I've pretty much used up my wire. So we're going to catch that tag end wire here. The tying thread, 1, 2, 3, 4 good tight wraps. Hold down on your thread. Just helicopter that extra wire off. Clean up those butt ends a little bit. And we'll take that hackle tip out. Then we're going to do our final piece of marabou here. This is kind of the fullest plume I picked, and this will be your fullest, most dense plume on the fly will be that front wing, because the whole goal here is to try and taper that fly. Bait fish and most natural things in the water all have a taper to them, from thin down at the tail to thick up at the front and head. Especially bait fish like sculpin or chubs, which is primarily what this fly imitates, or crayfish, kind of like the colors we're doing here with their thick tail. But they all get thinner as you go back on their body. So this plume we're going to take and we're going to go pretty much to the tips of that veiling marabou on there. Maybe a little shy of that. But we're going to catch that in with a good tight wrap, a tying thread. Tie that in 2, 3. Make sure it's distributed at least a little bit over the top and not all bundled in one spot. And we're going to clip off those butt ends. Alright, so once we got that final front wing tied in, I'm going to take, I did the orange legs in the back, kind of like crayfish claw tips. I'm just going to take olive legs for the front. These like a brown olive, kind of to match the rest of the color scheme. And I took 2 legs this time for the front. Usually I go by the double it rule with rubber legs on streamers. Whatever I do on the back hook, I'll double it for the front. If I do 2, if I'm doing a big streamer and I do 2 in the back, I might do 2 or 3 on each side in the front, just to, again, add to that bulk as you move up the fly. So I'll bind that in with 3 good wraps on the near side, bring those legs over, tie them in, 2 legs on the far side, and bind those butt ends down. And here is where we get to the fun part with deer hair. I know deer hair is not always everyone's best friend, but we're going to start. I have olive, like an olive brown here. I like to use the Primo strips just because you get a lot of hair, good spinning hair for the money. And as opposed to your dry fly hair, this deer hair is quite a little bit longer. It's a little bit thicker than like good Comparadun hair or something. This means it's more hollow. A little better for streamer tying, a little bulky for small dry fly tying. So I would save your expensive Comparadun hair for the dry flies and get some better deer body hair for the streamer tying. She'll go through a bit of it. And I'm going to look for a section that's got a little bit better tip barring on it for my collar. So the first thing we're going to add here is this collar stack. And for that, I'm going to take a clump here. I'm going to eyeball it. I can always get rid of it if I get rid of some if I grab too much. So I'm going to take my comb here and comb out, this is important, comb out those butt ends of your hair. Grab your clump by the tips and comb out those butt ends. Get rid of any of the short hairs in your stack, any short cut hairs, and to get rid of any underfur, that fuzzy stuff that just gets bound up. in your thread as you tie, and it makes the whole deer hair tying process a lot less fun. So I'm just going to stack the hair here real quick. I forgot a hair stacker, so I'm just going to kind of tip stack that in my palm. That actually stacked a lot better than I thought it would, just in my palm here. It actually worked really well. I did not expect that. I'm usually very bad at that, but I figured I'd give it a shot. So I'm just kind of picking out real quick any broken or any hairs with broken tips or look a little malformed. I'm going to measure my collar stack here to go about almost to the bend of the hook there. You want a little bit of a significant collar on here, but I'm going to grab it about like that. And then, kind of like an elk hair caddis, this is just going to be your collar. I see a lot of people, they try and incorporate the collar stack into their first clump, and a lot of times that can get kind of messy. So I just take and I cut off all the excess hair here. And I'll tie this in just like the head, the neat head on an elk hair caddis. Catch it just by the butts there. Give it a couple good wraps. And you see how I always keep my fingers firmly on that hair to start so that it doesn't spin around the hook on me. This collar stack you want to stay right on top. So I'm going to check underneath with firm but not strong pressure on my thread. Make sure that hair is going 180 and only covering the top half of my hook there. And once that's good, I'm going to put 1/3 and final wrap of thread in there. I'm going to pull really tight. Helps if you use like a GSP type thread or a gel spun thread of some sort. Right here I'm using 140, but I'm not using GSP. If you're not going to use GSP, go with a heavier denier thread. 6/0 or anything light like that will likely just snap on you. You can see I'm going to work my way forward through those butt ends a little bit up to right in front of them, and you can see that's pretty good. That when I grab and wiggle, that hair doesn't go anywhere. That collar stack is locked firmly in place. I'm going to take and I'm going to trim up those butts a little bit, but if you cut them right in the first place, you don't need to do too much trimming. That's all. I didn't really need to take much off there, if any, really. But then I'm going to go right there. Grab my next clump of hair here. So we're going to take our next clump of hair here. I just cut the tips off because all we really need is the body of the hair there, that thicker part. I'm going to take that right up against the butt ends of our collar stack here. Again, I'm going to cord my thread up. For the back, because of the dumbbell eyes, we're actually not going to spin the back clump. It's easier if we just stack it. So we're going to take that hair, take the middle of it, going to aim for the middle. I'm going to do one, hold one end of it, do 2 loose wraps, and then pull tight. It's kind of on there. And we'll go 3rd wrap, throw a 3rd, and I'll throw a 4th in there just to really lock it down. You don't want to sit there wrapping your thread all day, winding 20 wraps of thread just to bind your hair in. If you have good thread tension on a nice strong thread, you shouldn't need to. Then I'm going to take a slightly sparser clump of hair here. Again, I'm going to trim the tips off. And that's a little full. Take some of those hairs out of there. And we're going to tie that guy in here on the bottom. 1, 2. Gonna pinch and pull. Wiggle that thread up through the, try not to trap too many hairs down. A few good wraps on there. You can see that's in there nice and good. That hair doesn't move or wiggle too much. Those clumps don't move or wiggle. So I'm going to pull all this hair back. Watch that hook point on your fingers. I'm going to wiggle my thread up straight through my deer hair here, as to not trap any hairs down. I'm going to come up under those eyes and right in front of them, right here. Cord that thread up again. Then we're going to take one last clump of deer hair to finish it off. Again, we're taking about a pencil diameter's worth of hair here. Trim those tips. Get rid of those tips. Brush out your butt ends. This is really important if you're spinning the hair, that all that fuzzy under fur is out of that hair, because that tends to gum up the spinning. So this time we're going to grab our hair, set it, aim for the middle of the clump here, do 1 loose wrap, 2 loose wraps. Then as that starts to kind of flare, I'm going to press down with my thumbnail on it. And 3, and that spins around the hook shank like that. And I check to make sure that spun nice and even. And I'll take a 4th, see it moved a little bit, I'll take a 5th, and that hair kind of stopped moving there. I'm going to keep good thread tension at all times, especially if you're using GSP type threads, because they do not have a stretch. I'm going to wiggle my thread up to the eye of the hook here, if I can find it. There we go. Catch the eye of that hook. Keep our hair back. This takes a little bit of practice. Try not to catch too many of those hairs there. Up at the front. Get a good wrap. Gets 2 good wraps around your hook eye. I usually try and get 3. Make sure we have a good few wraps around just the eye of that hook in front of that hair. Try again, throw just a quick half hitch in there. And just the eye of the hook. There we go. Caught that in, and that half hitch essentially saves my work, so I can just kind of work around that without any fear now. Pull out my thread, and now is time for our whip finish. So again, I'm going to make sure I'm not catching, I'm not trapping any hairs down. Go in, find that bare hook eye, throw 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 whip finishes on there. 5-turn whip finish. Tighten it down. And your thread, you can clip your thread, and the tying portion is all done. Now for the arguably harder part, which is the trimming. And for this, I'm going to grab a double-edged razor blade. Be extremely careful with these. We're going to make sure our rubber legs and everything are out of the way. I'm going to take my comb. I'm going to kind of brush out, make sure there's not really any trapped hair down there. We're going to brush out our head, we're going to start on the underside of this hook. And you're going to kind of look for your dumbbell eyes, which are somewhere in that mess of deer hair. And we're going to take our double-edged razor blade, and I like to rest it on the eye of the hook. And we're going to slowly wiggle our way back, and you'll feel you'll hit the lead eyes, but you're just going to come up and kind of skim over the top of them. And we're going to trim that belly flush. So you can see I've got the belly of that fly trimmed perfectly flat. So the next step here is we're then going to arc our razor blade, bend it in our fingers here. This is where you kind of want to be careful. And I like to pop the fly out of the vise for this portion. But I take, and I again rest that razor blade right against the eye of the hook, and in kind of a sweeping motion, I'll go up and back on that head. So I'm going to brace against the eye of the hook. We're going to go up and back. And that first cut's not going to be perfect. It's not. It doesn't have to be. But we're going to kind of find that and trim our way back, just carefully, and work back to that collar. You don't want to trim that collar off, those tips that you left in. You want to leave those nice and intact. But you don't have to be super precise with the razor blade cutting. Again, we're not making artistic deer hair poppers or anything. This is a quick and dirty trout streamer. And we're just going to kind of work our way back to that collar. Again, narrower at the front, wider at the back as that collar. So that's pretty much done for the razor blade. And then I'll take the sides of that head there. I'm going to preen them out, kind of with make sure those rubber legs stay out of the way. Preen it out a little bit, pick it out, make sure all those hairs are kind of flared out to the side, but again, try to avoid your collar hairs. Then I'm going to trim, I missed a few on the underside there. Just going to get those with my scissors. And then I'm going to angle this cut with my scissors towards that hook eye along those dumbbell eyes at almost a 45-degree angle. And then I'm going to repeat that process on the other side here. I missed a couple on that side. And you don't have to spend all day trimming. It's kind of a quick and easy trim. It's nothing perfect. Make sure those are kind of preened out to the side there. And then we're going to angle our scissors. I'll swap hands here. By no means ambidextrous, but angle it almost at a 45 towards that hook eye and just trim those guys off. And then get that up towards the front. I'll look at it from both sides. I'll see if it needs anything else. I'll take a little extra off back here. Try and better match that other side. But then we'll just trim up around the hook eye. Round out any hard edges you see around the fly. With your scissors there, and that head is done. You can see kind of that broad profiled head that pushes water really nice. And then I left my rubber legs long on purpose to start so that it was easy to hold them out of the way and work with them during the tying process. But I'm going to come back and go about halfway down the rubber legs on the back hook here and just clip those off. Clip off that excess here. And there we go. Other than that, that is a mini dungeon tied on a single hook and a shank in a crayfish dirty olive type color.
Dude, that is one sexy fly right there. All right, so that was the mini dungeon. Again, I really wish I didn't even have to give this fly away. I really want to throw this one in my box and go throw it right now. But I am going to give it away. But I love the way Gavin ties because he's so detailed. Every fly comes out looking so fantastic. And he just absolutely killed it with this fly. So hopefully you guys learned a lot. Again, we're going to give away this one right here. So again, be a subscriber on the channel. Give this video a thumbs up. Leave a comment. And that'll enter you into the drawing. And we'll have a random selector that will choose the winner. And I'll let you guys know who that is. But anyway, a couple more videos coming from Gavin. We have more adventure videos coming along the way. And plus some other additional fly tying videos that I'll be doing. And anyway, thank you guys all so much for joining the channel. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it. If you are enjoying the channel, I would love for you guys to subscribe. But hey, that's it for now. Good luck in the giveaway, and we'll see you all soon.